Welcome. Tonight we're going to talk about, welcome to the Minot Skeptical Society. We're going to talk about what is skepticism and who are skeptics, or what is a skeptic. A couple things I want to show you. I got some books that I've got. First of all, did you know that Carl Sagan Day is next week?
No.
He was born November 9th, 1934. And they're going to have Carl Sagan Day down in Florida. They're actually, one of the, Barnard University is having an actual thing where they're doing a whole thing on Carl Sagan, including showing cosmos and stuff. So he's him and James Randi and are sort of like the godfathers of skepticism. And one book that is, if those of you are interested, I don't know who may have read this, Carl Sagan's The Demon Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Darkness. Very good book. I still read it because it has a lot of good things in it. Also the quotes that you see on the blog, I get the quotes from here. All right. Next book is another one called Clear Thinking. This is basically on critical thought. The processes in critical thought, what goes into it. Like that. It's a good book. It's a little bit dated, but it's very good. It has a foreword by Isaac Asimov, if you know who Isaac Asimov was. Okay. Science fiction writer, and very good. Another book which I read, which I don't, if you're really interested, I don't recommend just getting it to read. This is one called Doubt. It's a history. And it took me a while to read it. Now you can usually read a book within a week. No, this took me about 3 weeks to read. But it's written by a gal named Jennifer Michael Hecht. This is actually a history of doubt, or like skepticism, that goes back to the Greeks, or even further, actually goes back to India, and talks about the Hindus, the Buddhist Buddhist faith. Buddhism actually started out as an atheistic type faith and then developed theism later. Talks about the Vedas, which I didn't know much about, which helped me understand Hinduism a little bit more, which I thought was interesting. It also talks about early Judaism, well, the Greeks, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato. It goes into then it goes into Roman times, and goes into early Judaism, some of the skeptics there, and goes some actual biblical skepticism. It goes into that. It goes into Christianity and Islam, and then it goes all the way up and through the Reformation, and actually comes up to now, where it talks about Carl Sagan, and it talks about some other people. So it's good, but I wouldn't get it just to have light reading. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of brain power. And there. 2 magazines which I subscribe to. One is called Skeptical Inquirer, which came out recently, and they call Skepticism called 2.0, What's Next, which is good. This is published by the Center for Free Inquiry. Very good one. I'll pass this around if you want to take a look at it. And the other one is Skeptic, Michael Shermer's magazine, which has a lot of good articles in it, including a section for children. So if nobody's seen those, you can pass those around. Don't mean you keep them, because I want them back. So, okay? So, that's what that is. So, what is skepticism? Well, first of all, we got to go into definitions. I don't know if anybody saw, but I had the TV come by, KX TV, earlier today, and they interviewed me about the Skeptic Societies, and they actually put a thing on tonight at 6 o'clock, and maybe 9 o'clock tonight, which is good, and talked a little bit about skepticism. But they asked me, what is a skeptic, and what is skepticism? So I was trying to remember my talk tonight and get the definitions down. One thing I told them is a skeptic does not equal a cynic. A cynic is not a curmudgeon old guy who doesn't believe anything and doesn't care for anybody. That's a cynic. Okay, a skeptic is not a cynic.
Diogenes Laertes from Sinope was the cynic par excellence. He lived in a bucket and a pail and did all of his physical necessities out in the open and all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not really a pleasant fellow.
Webster's New Collegian Dictionary defines a skeptic, or a cynic, as, here to that thing with the ancient Greek school of philosophy. And actually it doesn't sound too bad. It held the view that virtue is the only good, and that essence lies in self-control and independence. That's really in of itself is not a bad idea. However, in modern times it's gotten the idea of some guy who believes that human conduct is motivated solely by self-interest, and there is no virtues. There's, he's out for himself and doesn't believe in anybody else. That's what modern cynicism has gotten to be mean. A skeptic, there's a couple different definitions of skepticism. We'll go into what modern skepticism is. But a skeptic is one to hear advocate. A lot of times it's basically regarding religion or religious principles, and that's what it used to mean in the old days. It's gotten a new meaning now with the new scientific skepticism. But originally it was a doctrine that all knowledge is basically uncertain. It's almost like Plato's legend of the cave, if anybody's familiar with that. Plato had the idea that you looked on a cave wall and the only thing you saw was the shadows, and that was the only thing you ever saw. It sounded a little bit odd to me when I read about it, but that was what he did. So that's basically what skepticism there means. However, it's a provisional approach to claims. We have to see the evidence. We have to be almost like, I'm from Missouri, show me. And that's really what it is. We don't necessarily do the investigations or anything like that, but we got to have the evidence, and it's got to be logically consistent, and it's got to fit. And that's when a skeptic will believe things or accept them. I've gotten into a different definition from belief myself. So, well, here we go into the history. Started with Pyrrhonianism. This is I got mostly from Skeptic magazine, and then from the Doubt thing. But it was a school. This is what you were talking about. Casey was a Senate. I mean, it's in the 1st century. And then one of the first one was Pyrrho of Ellis, and it was supposedly he traveled to India and learned practical skepticism there. So skepticism has a long and ancient history. It's just something not new. Even Al-Ghazali in 1058 or 1111 established skepticism part of Islamic philosophy. Part of, tell me if I'm right, Nabil, Orthodox Ash'ari school?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. Then he kind of, then there's some controversy now whether Al-Ghazali actually, he was part of that school in Islam, but then he also, he was trying to prove the existence of God and stuff, and then he kind of said that mathematics was the work of the devil, and so as Neil deGrasse Tyson so aptly puts, that's the reason that you really don't see much modern scientific progress in the Islamic countries even today, is because of that establishment. So if you go and look, there's very few Muslim Nobel Prize winners. But up until that time, Islam, particularly in Baghdad, was a center of scientific investigation, mathematics,